on our show today, we have the very awesome Brian Pollock, who has a very extensive career. An NYPD retired detective, which is so cool. Thank you very much for what you've done for the years that you were there. And additionally, he is a screenwriter, director, and actor. So please let's welcome Brian Pollock to the show.
Hey, Brian.
Woo-hoo. Thank you for your service as well.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me. This is great. I'm excited.
Dude, can I ask you, were you clapping for Brian or for me?
For you.
Oh,
Brian,
okay. That's what I
talk
thought.
to Brian all the time.
Yeah.
Oh,
I thought it
cool.
was for
Okay.
my introduction. I thought you were clapping for my introduction.
That too.
So as I mentioned in the introduction, Brian, you were an NYPD. You're retired now, very recently retired, correct?
Yes, about a month now.
Nice.
Okay. And you started out like after schooling, whatever, going to work in the music industry in some level, and that didn't really work out for you as you wanted. So you went into being this cop and serving the community, which is so awesome. But what's your real passion again?
It's filmmaking. Filmmaking is it. This is what I love to do.
Yeah. So did you want to get into that when you were a child? How did it all begin?
You know, it's weird. I've always wanted to write. I've always been creative with writing and had these thoughts in my head. I never really thought making films was an option. You know, that was something other people did. And I used to work at the store called The Wiz. This is aging me now because that store's been gone for a long time, but it was an electronics store. And I used to write on the back of the sales pads all these little sketches and all these little scenes. And, you know, I still have them to today. I go through it like Woody Allen used to say. He opens up a drawer and he has hundreds of different little bits. And that's what it's like for me. So I've always been interested in it. I got into radio a little bit towards college and did some acting. And then I joined the police department when things really weren't veering the way, you know, I wanted to go. But I never gave up my passion. And thank God in 2008, a buddy of mine reached out. He says, "What are you doing? This isn't what you're supposed to be doing. Let's get creative." And I wrote a full screenplay. We put it on stage in Manhattan. It was 2 acts, and we had a great audience review of it, and I kept going from there.
It's really awesome.
Brian, that's terrific. Let me ask you, I'm just curious because I have a list of favorites. Who are your favorite directors?
You know, it's interesting. I speak to a lot of my friends and colleagues about that, and you know, Alfred Hitchcock was a huge influence. You know, you watch some of the work he was able to do with the technology they had back then. But I think now my writing, Quentin Tarantino is huge for me. I might not agree with some of his content or some of the things that he writes about, but his ability to write films, the way he makes it theatrical cinema, he uses dialogue in such a way that it carries through it. A lot of films that are very heavy in dialogue get draining. But the way he writes it and the way he films things is so creative, and I try to mimic my style to that.
Amazing. I was watching, you talk about directing. I was watching that relatively new film that came out, Greyhound with Tom Hanks. Did you happen to see that?
No, I saw a lot of clips of it, but I didn't get the whole film, no.
It was absolutely phenomenal. What I found was so interesting was it was done with so many different directing concepts that there actually was, even though it was filmed, it was based on a true story or somewhat relative to a true story, but it was based on the convoy crossings in World War II, and it was shot with a green screen, and not one drop of water was used to film that, to do that film. And when you watch the same way that when Apollo 13 was made, and some of these other movies, it's just fascinating the way that the directors actually get into it. And I think particularly I'm a big fan of Tom Hanks for what he's done with his directorship, where he's really made you feel like, I remember when my father was alive, he said watching Saving Private Ryan was so difficult because it was so real. So
Right.
in terms of watching some of those directors, who have brought you into the realm of reality where you're even like with The Godfather, you might say, oh my God, this is so real, I'm really there.
You know, Scorsese obviously is a huge influence when it comes to films like that. Even it's something as old as Mean Streets. You know, he brings you into the character's mindset. He brings you into their feelings where you actually feel like you're in the scene with these people. Tom Hanks is great. Mel Gibson, even some of the directing he did, like with Braveheart and what was that movie with with it, the military movie he just made. The name skips my mind, but it was a very low budget movie. I think what's important for me when watching a director and what he does is the truth he tells. I think special effects are very overused these days, and it carries a film way too much. I think you have to be very honest, like The Revenant. I think it's so amazing with technology today that the movie The Revenant actually went out there and filmed in the wilderness and filmed in the lakes and filmed in the frozen water to get the real feel and put the actors into that environment where you're not pretending as much or trying to create this image of being cold. Leonardo DiCaprio said they were freezing cold. They were in this ice cold water and they were filming, and it really puts you in that mindset and makes it more realistic for the audience.
Well, you remember in Titanic they did the same thing.
Yeah. They
Titanic
sunk the
was
ship,
really,
and it was great.
they had the ice water and they had the set and so forth. Just for our folks, because I don't want to assume that they know. Can you tell us what exactly does a director do? And what's the difference between a director, a producer, and maybe some of the major titles that people see in movies, but they don't really understand what they do?
So there's a lot of differences people kind of mix up. A director is kind of the parent of the family, right? He's the person in charge of the image. He's in charge of the story being told. But that story gets delegated to people to do their craft. So the director of photography is the person that's in charge of the image. He's gonna listen to the director and understand what the image is you want, what is exactly you're trying to portray in this scene, and he's gonna have his cameraman capture that cinematographically with the cinematography. Then you have he'll set up the lighting. Producers, there's a lot of different type of producers. The main producer is the person who's in charge of, no pun intended, producing the film. You'll have stage managers that are controlling the set. You have executive producers, which are basically in charge of the money. A line producer is pretty much the head of all the different producers on set, and then it goes down from there. But a director is really just the person who's supposed to say this is the vision I'm looking for, and then delegate to his teammates how to get that picture seen. Does that answer it?
Oh yeah, because that's
confusing.
amazing. But the one I want to know is at the end of every film, what is a grip?
So they have a grip. They have gaffers. These are people that are in charge of like the lighting, in charge of like taping down like green screens or anything with the wiring. Those are basically the right hand man of like the cameraman or the director of photography.
So when Duke calls me a grip, that's not really an insult. He says you're just a grip.
Yeah,
that's not an insult.
I'd have to research that with him and see what exactly mean.
As a cop, as an actor, how has being a cop helped your acting?
Oh, wow, it's interesting. You get to see a lot of different reality people aren't really privy to as normal civilians, if you want to call it that. I've seen the worst in people. I've seen the best in some people. So it gives you something to tap into when you're doing certain scenes or certain moments where you have to create an emotion or you have to try to really find truth in what you're doing. I can relate to a lot of things I've experienced as a police officer, whether it's, pulling somebody out of a car that's been in a tragic car accident or trying to console a person whose relative just passed away and was standing right next to them. There's so many emotional things that I've gone through, and my therapist says I'll be fine in a few months, but it's great as an actor. You get to really tap into it. I did a scene in this movie Unspoken recently, and it was a very emotional scene, and I had to cry like 5-6 different takes. And every time I took, like, how are you doing that? I'm like, I don't want to let you know what I'm thinking about right now, but it was good because you could tap into it, and then afterwards you're exhausted. But it gives you something that to really use when you need different emotions. Yeah. I don't suggest it to people. It wasn't a healthy way to do it, but it was.
It's either that or onions. It's
onions, yeah.
Onions always worked for me. So, how many films have you actually written and been a part of?
So I've written one feature film that's been produced and actually has been distributed. About like 9 or 10 different short films. I directed 2 of them. Acting wise, probably 20, 30 films I've acted in as of now. Some have done really well. One, Monsters and Men, got into the theaters, went to Sundance. And then a recent one, Unspoken, that's going to be in a festival soon. It's gotten some pretty good awards. So yeah, it's exciting.
What festival is that?
The International Film Festival in Manhattan. It's going to be a virtual festival because of everything going on now. But that's going to be playing in November. And what's exciting is they just nominated me. Actually, they just offered me an award, a Junior Lifetime Achievement Award, for the work I've done in film. So that was exciting to see.
Oh, yeah.
Very nice.
Congratulations.
Thank
Yes,
you.
Definitely. That's a really nice achievement for you.
It's good to see, you know, when you do this work, it's hard because you never know how an audience is going to perceive your work. But it's great to see other colleagues if they recognize it and they appreciate it. So it's a good feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
Were you always good at memorizing lines, or have you gotten better?
Memorizing lines has never really been an issue with me. I think more just getting over the nerves initially on set. But as far as lines, I mean, I've walked onto a set one time where I was literally supposed to be an extra, and there was an ice storm. I don't know if you guys remember. It had to be about like 6 or 7 years ago. There was a bad winter ice storm, and the Bayonne Bridge going to Jersey was frozen, and you couldn't even drive without skidding. So a lot of the actors got into accidents and couldn't make it to the set. So I was going there all happy. I'm going to get some free food and stay in my one line and go home. And the director came up to me and goes, listen, we have a problem. One of the actors bailed out. Can you do his part? I'm like, all right, that's great. I love acting. I'll do it. And he handed me 6 pages of lines and says, all right, we'll be filming in 20 minutes. I was like, this is great. But I did it, thank God. I was able to hold it down. And so.
So when you get fed lines, who is the person who feeds you the lines?
So feeding lines, I think, is more of a theater thing. If you're forgetting your lines, they have somebody off stage to help you. In film, everything's filmed in such small chunks. Like you're doing maybe like 20 seconds of a scene, 10 seconds of a scene. So if something goes wrong or they couldn't capture what they wanted, they'll just cut, they'll reset and just let you go over your line again to capture it. That's the one good thing and the difference between film and theater. In theater, you get on stage and whatever comes out, and that's it. On film, they can chop it up a little bit and make it work.
Mm-hmm.
So you're
Brian, let
saying
me
it's a
ask you-
little bit easier.
Yeah, but I theater's rewarding. When you hear that audience, as you know, Amy, you hear that audience's reaction. It's a great feeling. With film, until it's done, it's kind of like it's a little draining because you're doing scenes over and over again, hoping that you're giving that same emotion.
Yeah.
Brian, let me ask you a conceptual question. From the position of from the audience's position of being told a story, how much do you think, speaking contemporary, do you think we've gone away from the great storytelling where we're relying, as you said before, too much on CGI? Because I've always been fascinated when you'll see theater and you'll see, for example, the play that a few years ago that was about Truman, and it was just one actor with essentially no props, and he kept the audience engaged. And then you'll fast forward all the way to something like Star Wars. Do you still think that the most basic story, like even some of the great work that Clint Eastwood has done as a director, do you think a great story still can carry the day without all the bells and whistles?
Absolutely. And I think you're right. We spoke about it briefly. I think the story is taking back seat to the effects in a lot of cinema. They talk about things that carry a film. In a horror movie, the star is the creature. In comedy, the star is the comedy. Sometimes when a script doesn't have that it factor, they rely on the big noises and the crashes and like Fast and the Furious. I mean, if you're a fan of the film, that's great. They made 100 of them, I think. But it's the same thing. It's car chases. It's a lot of action, a lot of fast sounds, and it's not like you said, Tom Hanks, like Castaway, where you can put a guy on an island and you can carry a film with literally nothing happening but the emotion. Absolutely, you can carry Revenant. We just spoke about Revenant. There's a movie, very little special effects. It was just a story about them out there, in that era. It definitely can carry. It's up to, and it's the responsibility of these filmmakers to make it happen. I think you're selling out by using the effects as the star in a film.
I guess as a follow-up to that, how do you as a director see a film like Blair Witch that was really done on a shoestring budget and we know where it went? Was that a fluke, or is that something that you think people can do if they have the right angle, so to speak?
I think it was a great concept for that filmmaker, but I think it's a one and done. I think once the audience has seen and experienced that, it's hard for people, and people have tried to mock off the back of that. But I think it was a great concept because it was never done before, and people were wondering what the reality of this film really was. But once the truth came out, it's hard for a filmmaker to mock that now because the audience is already aware of it. But at that moment, brilliant idea, brilliant.
Brian, have you ever done any kind of television?
I did extra work on TV shows. I've never written for any television series and stuff like that. I think it gets very heavy with the management when it comes to television. As an independent artist, it's harder to do TV, although a lot of these community television channels allow you to have access. Filmmaking, I mean, literally, you get a nice camera and someone to work with, and you can make a film.
Yeah, pretty awesome.
It's
Brian,
fun.
if I could ask you, going back to being a director, what's the biggest struggle a director has? What are the biggest obstacles that you face?
Your own mind, your own mindset, your insanity. Because you're trying to be perfect at what you're doing. But it's also the budget. When everything comes to money, sometimes when you make a film, if you're on a very low budget, you're hoping people are going to participate and be part of this film for the love of the project and for the love of their art. And unfortunately, you come across a lot of people that will bail on you, if they find something that might be a little bit better. Being on set and having to deal with, casualties happening, whether it's, the lighting's not the way it's supposed to be, a location that you set up, you now lost. Ideas changing, something happens on set, you have to switch the script up, so now time runs short and you might not get everything you want. And sometimes you don't find that out until you get to the editing room and you're sitting there piecing the pieces together and you're looking at your script going, oh wow, we missed this whole chunk here. Oh great. And now you got to somehow fill it in with some kind of filler clips.
And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking, again, bringing up The Godfather, I was surprised when I did some research how many deleted scenes I found. There was a lot of material taken out of that movie before it got to the final version.
Right. And a lot of that is, again, because of heavy management. Coppola had a hard time making that film. There was a lot of people involved with their hands on it, watching over him at all times. As an independent filmmaker, as much as a burden it is to not have money and not have access to certain things, it's also a freedom that, the person who's running it is the director, or if he allows the director of photography to help out with that. You don't have producers that are really grabbing onto you saying, no, we like this, we like that, and really going with their image. That's why you'll see a lot of director's cuts of films where they'll almost show you, this is really what my intention was with the film, but the film you saw was what the producers or the executives wanted.
Brian, I have a question with regard to the audio. There are so many movies where the underscore just makes the movie so good.
Right.
I think the movie that jumps out to me is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty.
Oh, right, yeah.
That whoever was the what do you call it? The music? Whoever was.
Composer, sure.
No, not the composer. The what do you call the person?
The sound mixer who put in like the follies and all.
No, the person who selects them, because all those songs were written by artists, and what do you call that when they collect the music and they I don't know what it's called, but
As a compilation, a compiler?
No, but it's like the music manager or something like that. But whoever does that, to me, that is an incredible talent, because if you don't have the right music for the mood, man, you could like totally destroy that. Have you ever had that happen to you?
It never happened to me, but I've seen it just in basic audio when you're recording dialogue or certain follies and it comes out like whether it's just scratchy or the audio just isn't clear enough, it could ruin a film. But yeah, as far as you're saying with the music, it absolutely it carries a film. It's basically the cart that brings somebody through a roller coaster, right? The film in itself is one element. But the sound, can enhance your emotions. It can make, look at Jaws, right? Jaws, they wasn't necessarily music, right? But the emotional sounds of whoever composed that sound made you feel that shark before you even saw it. And that's why Spielberg's like, I didn't even have to show the shark. Everybody knew it was there because of the emotional that they got from the sound in the film. So sound is 100% something that can kill a film. And as well, like a podcast, that listen, we could be speaking here, and if you can't fully understand what's being said, it just ruins the moment. So sound can definitely kill a film, and it can take a film all the way through.
So do you choose, when you're writing, do you choose music that is well known?
Up there you
Do you choose music
I'm sorry, I think
that
I
is
lost
well
you.
known? Do you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. When
Um,
you're writing a film, do you choose music that is well known, or do you also incorporate original music that is not, known to the common people?
So normally, when you're writing a film that's not in your mind, that all comes afterwards. Once you have the film made and edited, and you have your final cut, and you're ready to put the sound, the music to it, then you look for it. Obviously, like one of your past guests, they talk about copyright laws. It could get expensive to get original music put in films. So you find artists, that make their own music, that want to be part of a film, and you collaborate with them. And then you basically just play the film, and the musician will watch the film and create a tone or a sound that they think is pleasant to it. And it's just like a band. It's a collaboration between all different instruments. And when all the instruments play together at the same sound, it's great.
I just looked up the
You looked up the name.
As a music director is just what it's called.
Yeah.
The music director.
Well, that was a lot more simple
So you
than
could
we
have just said,
expected.
yeah.
Hey, Brian, I have a question. When you're filming as a director a factual story as opposed to a fictional, where does the line start to waver where you can bring in probably a good example might be, I remember when Tora was remade as Pearl Harbor with Ben Affleck, and they weaved in the romantic story. Where do you get the director's license, so to speak, and how do you work with that when you're dealing with a factual story you're recreating? Like you mentioned with Titanic, with Jack and Rose and all those things.
So some of it has to do with what the story's about. If it's about a character, if you're doing it about Mickey Ward, or you're doing it about a specific person, a lot of that's going to have to do with the person or their family and what they allow you to, how far they're going to entrust you with this film idea. They're going to trust you with this person's name. They'll have a big input on it. People have done films that they've changed names and made it similar. But when it comes to a specific person you're making a film about, it gets a little more complicated. With Titanic, again, it's really just it's an artistic choice. How much of it makes it more of a documentary, and how much of it do you want it to be more cinematic? If they kept that whole romantic thing out of Titanic, I think it would have played just like a documentary. And at that point, just make a documentary. Tell a story of the factual events that occurred. When you're making a film, you want to add some kind of element to it, like Donnie Brasco. They made Donnie Brasco, and a couple of those characters were actually 2 or 3 different people weaved into one person, because they didn't want to expand the cast. They didn't want to drag on the film.
We lost you. Can you repeat that?
No. So in the film Donnie Brasco, they had certain people were actually representing 3 or 4 different characters. So things that they did in the film was done by different people in real life. But to make it a simplistic film where you're not really dragged around all these different people, they had one person do it. So that was a creative choice made to say, hey, listen, how does the story tell cleaner and still give the same historical truth?
And as a follow-up to that, as technology has changed, has the director's mind in how I'm going to present, because I'm not saying this is the case, but obviously the theater, watching the movie in the theater right now is not possible, and we don't know when that's going to happen. But as technology evolves, and we had Netflix and all these other things, has that changed the director's minds over decades of how I need to present this, that my audience may not see this on the big screen, and there may be it may be even possibly interactive technology? Has that changed the way you guys do your jobs?
I mean, I don't know about some of the big name directors, but I could speak for myself. I just know whenever I make a film or write a script or start the process, that's honestly the last thing in my mind. What I really want to concentrate is how do I tell the story I want to tell in the best way. Even when it comes to locations, I'm not worried about how difficult it's going to be. Let's just try to make the best film we can, because you never know how an audience is going to react either way. The medium that it's told on, whether it's a television or a theater, afterwards, I think theater gives a better reaction to people. But as a filmmaker for myself, that's never a consideration. I just want to tell and show the best film I can make, and then see how the audience reacts to it.
Brian, I have a real quick question before we wrap. I wanted to find out, is there an outlet for independent filmmakers where, we were talking about Netflix and HBO, whatever. Where do independent films get shown online?
So there's a way to self-distribute now, where you can go through distribution companies and you pay a fee to have your film, finalized in with the as far as the quality and the sound, and that could play on Hulu, that could play on Google Play, Amazon Prime. Festivals are where you bring your films to try to get someone else to distribute it for you. You hope to get into a festival, distributing companies show up. If they like it, they give you an offer, and they can either do a theatrical release. They have connections with Netflix or with Amazon, and from there, depending, you get into Sundance for the most part, you're going to get a distribution deal, and some get theatrical releases.
Nice. Very, very exciting. So your dream is happening for you. Really, really
Yeah.
happening.
Well, I wore this Johnny Cash shirt because I know you guys are musicians.
I noticed. I actually noticed it when you first started. I said, he's wearing a Johnny Cash shirt. Do you have a favorite Johnny Cash song?
It's actually not one of his original songs, but when he did a remake of Hurt from Nine Inch Nails, I think that was unbelievable. Yeah. I think he took a song that, for me, growing up in my era, that's when it came out with Nine Inch Nails, but he put his emotional twist to it for what he went through. And for me, I could listen to that song like 100 times over.
Yeah, that's definitely a good one. Awesome.
Yeah.
Brian, I have one last question, just one last one for me. I'm just totally curious. As a director, when you're looking for a concept, would you more, I don't know if this is even a fair question, would you be more apt to look from a novel, from a book, or are you looking for a script? Or is there a difference in how, because I always find it interesting how some movies are adapted from a book where others, for example, Spielberg will say, I read this script and had to have this.
So for me, it's, I've really only directed my own content. From books are great, again, but when you take content from a book, or if you may want to make a film from a novel, a lot of the licensing and the permissions, it really goes to the author, so it's hard to take a novel because they really have control over what you do with it. That's their copywritten material. So for me, like I like just doing original concepts. If someone approaches me with a script and I like it, sure, I'll direct it. And part of the deal is that you have to give me creative licensing. You have to allow me to make this film. If you're telling me as a director, you trust me with your script, I need creative licensing, because if I'm not making the script I want, the film I want, it doesn't work for me. And that's not being like, it sounds a little worse than it is, but the truth is we all, it's like someone, like if you wanted to play a song and someone says, I want you to play my song, but I want you to do the notes this way. And I don't want you to, that's not you as a musician. You're not being truthful, so, but to answer your question, I think a script from somebody is easier because you have more leeway of making the way you want to make it.
That was a really great point, though, what you just made. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
look, you're a singer. If someone says, "I like that," but I don't like the notes you're singing. Can you sing this? That it's really robotic at that point. Yeah, sing it yourself.
Very true. Yeah, there's no creativity in it. Really, is what what it comes down to. And that was actually a great analogy, because a lot of musicians in general, they do play note for note for note instead of putting their own artistic twist to it, as similarly to a director.
Right. And I think that's what separates musicians from each other and separates, writers or directors. And the reason why you can ask a question like, oh, who do you think is an influence for you as a director or screenwriter? It's because these people have put their fingerprint on something and saying, this is my style.
I know exactly what you mean, because when I'm singing, people always want to change around. They say, can you shut the mic off?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, but then you won't hear me, so I don't get it.
That's right.
Oh, good one. Good one.
Good stuff, Brian. Good stuff.
So interesting, Brian, really.
Yeah, and I appreciate you guys having me on. This is great. I watched your podcast. You guys have some amazing people on your show. I've, like I said, just so recently watched the last one you just had with the copyright, and unbelievable what you learned from it. I might have to pull a couple of my films off the festival.